Okay, I'm gonna try and film my birth story before my children wake up. Essentially, there were a lot of like miracles that happened surrounding this birth. She's like, you need to have a C-section. And I'm like, why? The plot thickens. Hello and welcome back to Mama Magnifique, your go-to for holistic wellness and a healthy vegan lifestyle. My name is Anne, I am a health coach and a vegan mama. So today I'm going to share my birth story, aka how I went from home birth to emergency C-section. So if you're in for that kind of a ride, let's go. But first, just a little bit of housekeeping. Now, there are chapters down below, so if this is totally not interesting to you whatsoever, feel free to click ahead. But for those of you who care, or who have been around here for a long time, I wanted to just explain what happened with Mama Magnifique. So many of you know that I've been working on, or I had been working on a monthly Mama membership for like 3 years. And I just wanted to give you a little update, really quick housekeeping of what has happened with that and what the scoop is going forward. So essentially I've had to close the membership because nobody joined except my mom. Thanks, Mom. And you know, I'm heartbroken, obviously, but I you know, learned a very valuable lesson, and I am now working on trying to figure out how to, you know, pivot and figure out where to go from here. But many of you have been asking how's that going, and it's not really going. It hasn't really been going. And the reason that I'm sharing this with you is because I think it's easy to think that everything's working for everyone else, you know, and it's not always the case, you know. Like, I poured my heart and soul into this thing for like 3 years, and so much work, so much effort, created an entire bespoke like section of my website for this membership that I thought was, well, it was filled with value. It was, I know it was, but obviously I didn't have the audience that would support this kind of undertaking. You know, I don't have enough followers to make that happen, but I'm, you know, I have grandiose ideas about things, and so voila. But there were a lot of aspects, you know, that played into this. Number one, I was very pregnant when I launched Mama Magnifique, number one. Number two, there were a few people, organizations, and publications that I thought for sure were going to share Mama Magnifique. Like, you know, I thought for sure that they would like share it or promote it or something, and they didn't. So I think that played a huge role in me not like reaching people with the Mama membership, and I, as a very pregnant woman, did not have the time to properly promote the thing. And lastly, I think I must have been off the mark a little bit, or a lot of it, about what mamas actually need or have time for or whatever. Anyway, so I'm currently trying to like pick up the pieces of like all this content and where I left off, and you know, figure out how to pivot. So if you have any ideas for me, definitely let me know, you know, down below. I honestly, I would love to hear from you, actually, because I'm trying ardently to try to figure out a way to support my family with my business. And this was my way. This was like my, you know, like this is gonna work, you know. I'm gonna be able to support my family with Mama Magnifique. Again, heartbreak, just totally just didn't work at all. So I haven't really figured that out yet. So if, like, again, you know, if you have ideas for me, I'm all ears. And there's my moment of vulnerability. Actually, this whole video is gonna be about vulnerability. So if you're in for vulnerability, today's your day. Okay, let's go. So it all started on Tuesday night, this was like 4 months ago. Here I am finally filming this, but voila. At like 11:30 at night, I'm in bed, of course, and all of a sudden, I think my water has broken. But my water didn't break, it was that I was bleeding profusely. So I got out of bed and ran to the bathroom and was terrified. And this is like maybe a few days before my guest date. And of course, you know, I let my husband know, I call my midwife, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? Yeah, and sorry for all the blood, but you know, this is the birth story. So anyway, I call my midwife and she's like, how much? And I'm like, a lot. And so she's like, go to the hospital right now. So we get my son up and we get into the car. My parents live nearby, thank God now. So I called my mom and I let her know what was going on because, you know, obviously she was on call for the birth. I needed someone to take care of my older son so that I could labor. Okay, so my midwife tells us to go to the nearest hospital, which was surprising because, you know, like the plan B was a different hospital, but that's like 15 minutes away. But you'll find out later why this was important. But anyway, so she says go to the nearest hospital, and we go to the nearest hospital. So my son's in the car with us, totally confused about what's going on. It's like, you know, 11:30 at night. Meanwhile, my midwife says she'll meet us there and we'll reconvene there. So we get there, and fortunately my midwife has car seats, so she was able to take Edgar home to our house and stay with him until my mom got there, and then we went into the hospital. Because to be honest, that was like the first thought. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, what's going on with the birth? But then my son, you know, what's gonna happen with my 2-year-old? Is he gonna be in the hospital all night with us? Like, it was just like terrifying, you know, to think about that. So we go to the emergency room, and you know, the nurses are actually quite nice, which is good because, you know, it depends on who you get, right? And finally the ultrasound lady comes. I hadn't done any ultrasounds for the entire pregnancy because, you know, everything was going fine, I thought. And she was totally not enchanting at all, the ultrasound lady. I was like, this is my first ultrasound, so you get to see the baby first. You know, are you excited? And she was like, well, I wouldn't say I'm excited. And I'm just like, who are you? Anyway, so aside from her, most people were nice, but the ultrasound lady was super blasé. Meanwhile, all this time, my husband is sitting there on his phone. Now, generally when your husband's on his phone the whole time, it's kind of annoying, but in this case, he was researching what was going on because he was watching what the ultrasound lady was doing and kind of doing his own research to try to figure out what could possibly be going on. I'm hoping that this is just a blip and that we can go home and I can give birth at home. That's my hope. My hope is that this is a similar thing to what happened with my first pregnancy. You can watch that video, I'll link it, where, you know, I had a little bit of bleeding, but then it was no thing, and I went home and I had a home birth and everything was great. Well, spoiler alert, that's not what happened this time. So after a lot of bleeding and waiting, the doctor finally shows up and she's like, you need to have a C-section. And I'm like, why? And she's not warm and fuzzy at all, you know, at all. And she says, well, you have placenta previa and so you need to have a C-section. I was like, is there any other option? She's like, well, no, because your placenta is covering the opening of your cervix. So, no. And it really kind of took me a second to comprehend that. Because I'm not, like, I'd never thought in a million years that I would get a C-section because I would never elect to have a C-section, you know, and I'm like a home birther, a natural girl. So I just kind of sat there dumbfounded. You know, it's like the middle of the night at this point because, you know, it took a long time to get all that. The ultrasound took forever, like everything took forever. And then they were like, yeah, okay, so we're gonna go forward with the C-section probably tomorrow or something. And I'm like, tomorrow? I just wait, like sit here and like bleed, like what? Anyway, we're communicating with my midwife who's like, I know this doctor, she's really good. Not warm and fuzzy, but if you're gonna have a C-section, you know, she's a good one. So thank God for that. But then, you know, the bleeding keeps going crazily and they're like, okay, we're gonna wheel you into your C-section right now. And I'm like, okay. And of course, I was happy that we were doing it now because waiting to do that is just, well, it's agony, right? But then I was also extremely terrified. Like just like absolutely in shock, like completely in shock that we were having to do a C-section, and I couldn't believe it, you know? But there's a few things that happened, so let's talk about it. Essentially, there were a lot of like miracles that happened surrounding this birth, and I really learned a lot. When they finally wheeled me into the C-section, it was the middle of the night, like I said, and it was 4:44. And it was really interesting because that's like an angel number, that's like a special number. And as soon as we got wheeled in, because my husband was able to be there, so if the anesthesia worked, then your partner can be there with you. If it doesn't, and they have to totally like knock you out, then your partner can't be there because, you know, they apparently get freaked out because they have to like tape your eye. It's, ugh. Anyway, it worked. So I was numb, which was the weirdest thing ever. A C-section, like I could give a whole like dissertation. I'm gonna try to make this like a succinct video, but it is so weird. It is so strange. It is the weirdest experience, probably the weirdest experience of my life. Like, yeah, definitely the weirdest experience of my life. And anyway, so my husband was able to be there with me for this whole thing. But anyway, we're getting wheeled in and there's this nurse who's got like this like interesting head thing that's got like a design on it, and I'm just making really like awkward funny conversation at this point because apparently that's what I do under stress. So I'm like trying to crack jokes even though I'm absolutely terrified with the anesthesiologist and stuff like that. And the woman with the cool designs on her little hat thingy was like, okay, 4:44, right on time. And I'm like, why did she say that? I don't know why she said that. It's very strange to me, because that's like I said, the angel number. So I was like, okay, the angels are with me, awesome. You know, that can only be a good thing. And I'm shaking, terrified, about to have major surgery. I cannot believe it. I can't believe that my baby cannot come out, you know, vaginally. I just totally. And then I have to get numb down. And when in the operating room, it's freezing. Like, it's absolutely freezing. So I'm lying there, my teeth are chattering. There's all these, it's really bright. There's all these people that I haven't seen before. And you're just, oh my gosh. And they said, do you want any music? And I was like, yes, classical music, please, like Bach or something. I listened to Bach like on repeat during my first pregnancy, my first birth rather. And so another miracle that happened among many is when baby came out, like, so let's just jump forward, okay? So my teeth are chattering, I'm freezing and extremely like scared, but my husband's there right by my head, being very supportive and, you know, giving me little love pats on my head. And when baby came out, Clair de Lune was playing, which is one of my favorite songs by Debussy. And so that was kind of magical. It was like, just like if you know Clair de Lune, it's like playing, and that right when that was playing, because it was like a classical mix that they put on, which is cool. That's cool. I didn't know that they could do that. Like, there's perks, of course, to the hospital. They can, you know, push a button and then all of a sudden there's a playlist playing while you're having the most terrifying experience of your life. So it's like that softened it a bit, you know. And as he came out, one of my favorite songs ever, Clair de Lune, was playing, which was amazing. There's a child up. Okay, so a few more miracles that I want to mention. So I had placenta previa. That's why I had to get an emergency C-section, like obligatorily. And I didn't know that. I didn't know because I didn't do an ultrasound. Now, many people would say, oh my gosh, like, you should have done an ultrasound, then you would have known. And I get why you'd say that, but honestly, the fact that I didn't do one meant then that I was able to carry to term because I didn't bleed. That's another miracle. So the other miracle is that most people with placenta previa have like 2 or 3 bleeds during their pregnancy, and I had none. I had no way of knowing that there was something askew because I didn't bleed at all during my pregnancy. I only bled at the very last second when I was 39 and a half weeks. So that's like a miracle. That's amazing, right? But if I had known, not only would I have been really like stressed and upset about having placenta previa, I would have had to have been under like surveillance, you know, by the hospital, and then I would have known that I would have had to go to the hospital, and they would have induced me for an earlier birth, and I wouldn't have been able to carry to term. So it's like amazing, a miracle that I didn't do an ultrasound. You know, that's my opinion. I was obviously being very much cared for by my midwife, so don't worry. Like, everything was, we were keeping a close eye on me and everything, but everything was copacetic until 39 and a half weeks. So thank God I carried to term. And of course it was funny because the doctor was like, you know, we're going into the C-section, your baby's measuring small, you know, da da da. I'm like, okay. It's funny because they like to like believe ultrasounds perfectly, and you should never believe ultrasounds perfectly because they said my baby was small, and bam, baby came out 8 pounds 11 ounces. Baby was not small. And now baby's like huge. Baby is huge. He's a big guy. He's like in the 95th percentile, so he's like a big guy. But it's funny because they told me that he was small, and Arnold saw the doctor like after the birth, and she was looking a little sheepish because that was a big old baby they pulled out. But again, ultrasounds are cool. They're helpful if you need them, but they're not perfect. That's what I'm saying. So another miracle is that I didn't go into labor yet. So that would have really made the whole experience a lot harder. It was already extremely hard to deal with a huge surgery and it being so terrifying and the bleeding and all that kind of stuff. But had I been in labor, I think it would have been like off the charts. So I'm super grateful for that. So here's the thing. Am I sad about the C-section? Let's wrap this up here. I really learned a lot from this experience, and like I was always fine with like, not fine, but I was always okay, if ever something doesn't go right, I'm grateful, you know, that there's a hospital nearby and we can, hopefully everything will be safe and we'll get baby out if need be. But I never thought in a million years that I would have to have a C-section. And I really have so much gratitude now, like gratitude and compassion, and I've really learned a lot, like so much, like such a humbling experience to have, you know, a C-section when you weren't planning to. It's such a humbling experience. And when you think about, if I had been in the middle of like Cambodia without access to a hospital, like I would have died. I would have died, and my baby too. Like we wouldn't have made it, you know, because I couldn't have delivered vaginally. Like it was just not possible. You know, I had to be cut open in order for baby to be removed, you know? And so it really kind of makes you think like, wow, like, and it's a good lesson for me because you guys know I'm not the biggest fan of hospitals when they're not needed or not necessary, because I think a lot of things get medicalized when they're just natural processes, you know, only when they become actual emergencies, you know. Hospitals are fantastic with emergencies. They're fantastic with like those big enchilada things. But birth, I think, when everything goes well, is a natural process, right? But it didn't go well for me. So in this case, it was an emergency, and I'm just very humbled by the whole experience because I had to go to the hospital and I had to benefit from their services, which I think is a yeah, it's a very salient moment for me because I'm just filled with gratitude. I thought I would be a little bit more like, I don't know, embarrassed about it, but I'm not embarrassed about it because it was out of my control. I don't know why. It's just such a small percentage of people who get placenta previa. Like, what are the chances? Like, I don't know. Like, it just happened, and I feel just grateful, you know. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I just want to say that, like, if this happened to you, you know, if you had to have an emergency C-section, like, I'm with you. Like, I feel you. It's terrifying, but thank God that they were able to save my life and my baby's life, and that we had a hospital nearby. By the way, so I want to get back to my midwife telling us to go to this one hospital. So my midwife has been around the block. She knows what she's doing. So she told us to go to this one hospital because she had an inkling what was going on. And this hospital that she sent us to was not, like, again, that was not the plan B. But this hospital has like a higher level of care. So like if I needed, I don't know, like blood transfusions, or if I needed extra care, this would be the hospital in the region that would be able to provide that. So if we had gone to my plan B hospital, it's possible they might have actually sent me over to this hospital. Now, a lot of people have had not the best experiences with this hospital, and I mean, that's kind of like par for the course. Like, you know, the whole cascade of interventions that happens with birth, you know, I know people that went to this hospital, you know, that got the cascade of interventions, right? The Pitocin that led to painful contractions, that leads to the epidural, that then you can't feel anything, so then you can't push your baby out, and so then you're wheeled into a C-section. Like the classic cascade of interventions that has happened at this hospital. I know people. So there's a lot of things happening, but this hospital was like a higher level of care. So thanks to my midwife, thank God, that's another miracle, you know, like this was the hospital for this particular instance. And I'm really glad that we just trusted her with that, you know, and we just went ahead, even though I was, in the back of my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, are we really going to this hospital? Like, I haven't heard good things about the hospital, but I guess we have to go because this is serious. And, you know, all these like thoughts. Anyway, so the final bit of this birth story is that, so baby came out, baby was perfect and beautiful and started nursing wonderfully, like hallelujah. And, you know, we didn't sleep at all that night. And then the following night, of course, it's impossible to sleep in the hospital because you're like sitting up and you have a newborn and like the baby wants to be in your arms and not in the bassinet, obviously, because the baby just came out of you. And so it's like impossible and you can't sleep. Like they don't like allow like co-sleeping or whatever. So you're just like there, and my husband and I are just like losing our minds from fatigue because it's literally been 2 days in the hospital with no sleep whatsoever. And now I kid you not, now this is the plot thickens. So they move us to another region of the hospital, and I don't know, this is like the recovery ward or something. And I kid you not, they were doing construction with like hammering in the room next to us. Like we were surrounded. Like there was us recovering, right, from the C-section in the like C-section maternity recovery ward area, surrounded by construction, and they're literally banging on the wall behind my bed at 7 a.m. in the morning. Like I have a newborn and this is happening. Oh my God, I lost my mind because I hadn't slept in 2 days, right? So we're supposed to be recovering. And so I'm like calling the nurses. I'm like, guys, like, please make them stop the construction. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll talk to him. And it's not stopping and nothing's happening. So I hobble out of bed. You know, my husband's like, well, you told the nurses. And I'm just like livid. I'm like livid. I just had a C-section. Like no one's gonna mess with me. You're literally banging on the wall at 7 a.m. My baby was finally sleeping. So like I've got the like diaper on, you know, the postpartum diaper on and like a bra. So I put a blanket around me and I like hobble out there. I can barely walk because I just had a C-section. And I'm like, I just had a C-section and you're banging on the wall and my baby's finally sleeping. I just lose it. And this like dude who's like, I don't know, like 28, 30, and he's like just a bloke, and he's like, oh, yeah, I mean, I'll talk to my boss. And I'm like losing it. Like I'm literally in a diaper with a blanket kind of strewn over me, and I'm just like losing my mind, crying, saying, you gotta stop, you gotta stop, you gotta stop. And he's like, he's not doing it, you know, like it's not his fault. It's the hospital's fault, right? Because they organized that they would have, you know, these like repairmen, or these like, they were doing les travaux, how do you say that in English? Like remodeling in the maternity ward, in the maternity like recovery section of the maternity ward. So anyway, so then I called the nurse and I said, look, I would like to be discharged right away, like right now, we're leaving the hospital right now. And she's like, well, the doctor's not in yet. You know, like they would call like the child protection services if you left the hospital right now, because they have to check baby and make sure he's fine. You know, like you are your own person, you're an adult, whatever, but you can't leave right now until the doctor checks your baby. So I was like, okay, as soon as the doctor gets in, send him over and we're leaving. Because I was livid. I was losing my mind. And anyway, so the doctor came in, they did the like necessary tests, but though we got out of there relatively unscathed, because they love to like intervene with all sorts of things, but gratefully we were able to be like, no thanks, no. But anyway, since Ernest was really like a champion with all these tests, they were like, okay, you know, he's great, you can leave. So we left after, like we spent, other than the actual operation, we had one night, and then the following day we left, which is really, you know, like fast, but thank God we could get out of there, because it was a heck of a lot better once we got home, and, you know, I could relax, you know, we could actually sleep. Being home is a million times better than being in the hospital, a million trillion, especially because like their vegan food, like they didn't even have any vegan food. It was ridiculous. Like we ate like some fruit and some oatmeal for like a day, and you know, my husband went home and brought back tons of food, thank God, but like, yeah, it was really sad. Anyway, that part of the hospital, you know, needs a little improvement, but in the grand scheme of things, like aside from the like kind of postpartum day where they were banging and hammering and doing all these kinds of things, which was outside of the nurse's control, to be fair. It's just the whole, you know, logistics of organizing where they're going to do and when they're going to do work in a hospital, and you know, there's always mothers giving birth. So anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning into Veggie Magnifique. I have to go because my baby is up, as well as my 2-year-old, so I have to go. But thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe and like, and I will see you guys next time on Veggie Magnifique TV. Bye!